Hi everyone, Jordan Walker here with the Simplicity Group, and as promised, wanted to share a conversation that I had with an advisor that ran the best in-person event I've seen since my time here at Simplicity. And I apologize, I didn't do the best intro in the conversation video. That's what happens when you do things ad hoc sometimes. But want to really thank Jay Peroni at Faith Investor Services, a longtime partner working with me, working with Simplicity, for taking time out of his day between meeting with people that came from that AFES workshop that he ran and really being open to sharing some of the insights he has and how he's able to run events so well and some of the things that he's learned as far as things to do, things not to do. And so I hope you all find this valuable. Again, really want to thank Jay for taking time out of his day. And again, if you don't feel like your presentation skills are where they need to be, if you're not happy with how your in-person events are going, reach out to me, DM me the comment presentation, and I'll be happy to reach back out and schedule some time with you. Have a great day, and thank you again, Jay. Take care.
Talk about what you do or what you have done in the past as far as prepping for a presentation, because I was in Tennessee last week. You were doing an AFES, Maximizing Social Security presentation. And like I shared with you, that was the best in-person event I've seen an advisor run. That's not to say other advisors aren't doing a great job. That's not to disparage anyone else. But what I thought you did a great job doing was having a really impactful founder story. You had a great cadence. Everyone was engaged all the way through. And I'm just curious, when you're looking at preparing for any presentation, speaking of engagement, what have you, radio show, what's your process look like? Like, what are you doing to get prepped so that you're able to run a presentation like you did when I was there on Tuesday?
Yeah, so it first starts with mindset, right? If you don't have your mindset right, it's going to be a disaster from the start. So it's
Right.
getting the mind right from the beginning. And the way that I view a presentation is a lot different from a lot of people. A lot of people lecture, they talk to people, they try to present, which is good, but at the same time, it doesn't captivate people. So I try to be more like a guide. And by a guide, I mean, when my wife and I go to a new city, we love to do food tours because you get a local guide. They know the local scene, they know the best restaurants, and we get to sample 5 or 6 different restaurants before we decide where we want to go that evening or the next evening. But we really love the guide, the inside, the person that's, kind of showing us the town. This is why we would recommend this restaurant, and they've got the best barbecue. I've tried 6 other places. And that's the approach that I try to take with the presentation, is trying to be a guide, trying to get people to buy into what we're teaching. And I will confront them where they're at. Social Security is very, very overwhelming. And I'll make mention to that to get people participating right from the beginning. How many people here think Social Security is very complicated? And try to get a pulse on the room and try to get people talking and comfortable. And that's when I then open up with my founder story, talking about why I do what I do, which is about my grandfather who lost everything to the nursing home, taxes, and inflation. So I'd share a personal story and why I do what I do. So I get them kind of resonating with me and really getting me on their side of the table, that I'm here to go over the material, to show them what's out there. And I even admit, as a CFP and someone with a master's degree and almost 30 years of experience, that I still need software to figure out the choices. And they get a little kick out of that. So it's, again, just bringing people along the journey. That's really what it is a journey from the start of the presentation to the end, painting a picture, being on the same side of the table as them, knowing that they're confused, they want information, and trying to just present it in a way that's not over their head. Keep it simple. That's the way that I try to do it. Act like nobody in the room has ever heard of Social Security, and then I can always talk up if people want me to move faster. But really, just trying to get a pulse on the room. That's really the starting point for me.
That's great. And when you're actually prepping with the content, I think everybody obviously learns differently, right? And there's speaker notes in there. And one of the things that we've talked about, and I think you do a great job doing, is really just making that collateral, that presentation your own, right? Like, it's really just a framework. And so when you're going through, are you highlighting moments where you want to drive the engagement? Are you highlighting things for yourself where you're thinking, all right, I need to plug a client story here? Like, what's that look like? Because to me, And I know we've talked about this, like content is great, but it's not king. And if you're sit there married to it during a presentation, it can kind of kill the energy. So what's that prepping look like for you from a content learning standpoint?
Yeah. So I go through all the slides and I basically try to think of where can I add a story? Where can I add something in here that's going to connect and bring the principle home? And there's a lot of case studies in the Social Security, which is nice because then I can reference, I had a client in this situation, and one of them is a personal story where I lost my sister to cancer at 33, and my dad and stepmom were actually having to take care of my sister's son. So I can talk about the grandparents having to be the primary caregiver of grandchildren. So trying to just bring actual stories in that go along with the presentation go a long way. And people come up to me after and say, I'm so sorry you lost your sister. I lost a sister. So again, just trying to think of ways that people can connect with the material above and beyond, what do you get at 67 and what are the taxes? Those are great, but personal stories are really what are more memorable and will drive people to want to meet with you because you're more a person and not just a teacher that's spewing and just not absorbing and bringing material back to the class.
And one thing I noticed too that I hadn't really seen before, which I thought was interesting, is that you had a number of people that were asking really good questions. And I think you did a great job of saying, hey, just in interest of time, we got to keep moving forward. But then what was interesting is that they sort of kind of sharing what they knew amongst one another. And so you heard some chatter, and I feel like you kind of let them talk about it a little bit to let them, kind of test their knowledge a little bit.
Mhm.
And then I know she came back in, picked the conversation back up and kind of said, hey, like all great points, but let's move forward. And I didn't know, was that something that you inherently did out of instinct, or was it something where like, okay, I'm going to let this ride a little bit and then let the presentation move forward?
Yeah, there are certain points in the presentation where it kind of recaps or brings back old concepts, and I like to get them thinking about what we previously taught. So again, if they leave with a few things, they're going to understand what cola is. And I make a joke, it's not Coca-Cola. And, just little things to try to make it funny so that they go, okay, what was that cola thing? It's not Coca-Cola, but it's cost of living adjustment. Oh, yeah.
Right.
So again, just little things and little side conversations. You don't want it to be a distraction, but I do want them wrestling with the material just to see, are they understanding it and just really seeing the value of working with a professional. That's really what I want to drive home in the presentation. There were 6 areas in Social Security that we want them covering. And unless they're a planner or they're going to spend hours and hours trying to figure it out, going to professional and getting that second opinion is critical, especially when it could cost a family almost $200,000 if they make the wrong choice. And I like to bring those things back into point so that they are wanting to see me afterwards to say, okay, I want to make sure I get this right the first time.
And for the people that you've met with so far, I know, some of the feedback that we've received in the past is, hey, no one wants to come out and learn about Social Security, or, okay, it's a great topic, but I don't know how to transition from the presentation to booking the appointment and then actually going into that first meeting. And you've obviously been with us for a number of years. You've been out to AST, you've been to our Compass groups. And so I know you've learned a lot there, but what has been your experience just talking about this week with the people that you've met who came from those events? Like, what's the feedback?
Just like a guide, I'm here to answer questions. So I first start with their agenda before I have any agenda from Jay. It's, what did you like about the presentation that we did last week? What didn't you like? What would you wish we covered? So I'm trying to get input from them. And then what questions, personal questions, did you want me to answer that we couldn't answer that night? So we'll get into why they want to meet with me, and they'll ask me maybe 2 or 3 questions. And then as we start to work through their questions and we get that trust, they start to say, I know you just don't answer Social Security questions. What do you actually do, and how can you help me? And then that's when we start talking more about the planning process and getting into those 6 areas from the Social Security, the inflation, the mortality, the longevity, the taxes, all those issues that they really care about. And then I talk about how I help them solve those issues. I get back to my grandfather's story. He let inflation, taxes, the nursing home wipe him out, let's make sure that doesn't happen to you. Let's go through and do a financial analysis and see where you're at and see what you can improve upon. And they're like, sure, let's go through that process. And then that really starts going from the just being a presenter or teacher or guide to now being someone that can help them on their journey.
That's awesome. No, that's super great insight. And I know that you've done events by yourself. You've done it with assistants. You've done it with obviously me there. Based on your experience, and I know you've had some unique events in Tennessee for sure, but what are 3 do's and don'ts you would share with another ed advisor saying, hey, based on my experience, here's 3 things I would make sure I'm not doing or that I don't not have, whichever combo it would be. And then what are some 3 things that you feel like works really well as a result of those steps? So if it's having extra assistance, if it's extra study, is it focusing on stories? Just, if you wouldn't mind sharing those.
Yeah, so I would say the biggest thing is the founder story. That's the thing that I think connects right from the beginning. If you don't have the room right from the beginning, it's hard to recover from that. You can, but it takes a lot more to recover from a misstep than it does to start off on solid footing and really show control. And I like to work the room and walk around and just create energy. So I think that start is very critical. So having your founder story would be number 1. Number 2 would be having good stories to connect with the content. Thinking through, as you're reading the slides, figuring out maybe 2, 3 good stories that you can bring in at the right time to keep the audience engaged. And you don't want it all at the front. You don't want it front loaded where you have their attention and then you just do stats the rest of the presentation. So I would try to evenly put these stories throughout the presentation. The third thing that I would say is to be prepared, have a very good presentation with folders, with a process for booking appointments, and just making sure that at the end of the evening, you're trying to book as many appointments as you can, or at least get people to raise their hand and say, give me a call and let's set up a meeting. So those are probably the 3 things that I definitely would do is, again, preparing your founder story, client stories, and then thirdly, making sure you look like you're prepared and very well organized, because they take note of that and really pick up on those little things. You noticed I had wasn't a lot of money, but I had, some extra refreshments. I had some sweet tea, unsweet tea, and I even had some sugar-free sweet tea, and then some cookies and some pastries, just little things to know they're coming from work and just to make them feel welcome. So those are, again, just a few things that I would say. Do's, don'ts. Don't just read the slides. People do not like when you're just reading slides or like, I can read this. Other things that I would avoid would be trying to be too salesy, trying to do the bait and switch. I know you're here for Social Security, but we're going to talk about annuities instead. And the bait and switch. And I hear it all the time from talking to people. They love that we didn't bait and switch them at the Social Security. We went there, taught them stuff about Social Security, and we focused on that. And it wasn't a backdoor annuity presentation. The third thing that I would say is really to just practice. Make sure you don't go in cold, that the slides inside and out. It's very easy to get tripped on the numbers. Where did we get that number? And then the other thing along that same line is try to control the room. You notice a lot of people were asking questions, and I had to shut that down and say, hey, we're not going to get through the material. So you got to control the room. If people are asking too many questions or interrupting you, you've got to really take control of that room and not let it get out of control. So those are 3 do's and don'ts for you.
Yeah, those are great insights, and thank you for sharing that, Jay, because my big takeaway, if I had to sum it up really well on how I felt about that event, obviously it was pouring buckets when we started. I think we were getting ready to pack up and call it a day, and then all of a sudden all those cars started to pull up, and we had to pull in 3 extra tables, which was great. But what I thought you did really well is it truly felt like you were in a classroom, because you kept things very social, very, I think, friendly and warm, but then you did get kind of, not stern, but you were very quick to redirect the audience, say, hey, we got to keep going, right? and it made me think of like, some of my favorite teachers growing up, right? Where you knew there was authority there, but there was a lot of advocacy and like you really wanted to hear what they had to say, right? So again, fantastic job. For those that haven't met Jay, you'll likely see him at a Simplicity event if you, come out. And, for those that want to engage with you, what are some places that they can find you? I know what they are, but I'll let you kind of tell people where you are and what you're doing so they can engage with some of the great work that you're putting out there today.
Yeah, you can go to faithinvestorservices.com. You can go to any of your podcasts, Spotify, and look up Faith and Retirement. That's our weekly radio show, national radio show. And you could always send me an email at jperoni@faithinvestorservices.com. That's the letter J, last name Peroni, Peroni @faithinvestorservices.com. So those are a few ways that people can connect with me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Jay. That was super, super helpful. Again, fantastic job with the event, and appreciate you taking time out of your day.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jordan. Appreciate your
Hey, you're very welcome.
Thanks.
Of course.